Oral questions.
Questions orales. L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this is the most costly centralizing government in Canadian history. This government is bad for Quebec. The government has broken the immigration system, doubled the cost of housing, and doubled the debt. That's why it's incredibly bizarre that the Bloc Québécois leader has become the worst negotiator in Canadian history. The Bloc Québécois leader decided to vote 2 more times their confidence in this government to keep them in power without gaining a thing for agriculture or for seniors. Does the government wish to thank the Bloc Québécois leader for his generosity?
I'm going to ask the honourable member from Eastman, Falkirk, Eastman, Interlake, please. The Honourable Ministre des Services Publics.
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative leader mentioned that something is bizarre. Let me tell you what's bizarre. In Canada, there are 2.4 million seniors who received their Canada Dental Care Plan. 800,000 of them are in Quebec. Several hundred thousand Canadians have been able to receive dental care, sometimes for the first time in decades. It's odd, though, because the Conservative leader says that the Canada Dental Care Plan does not exist. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Parliament seems to be paralyzed because the Prime Minister goes against your judgment. The Prime Minister refuses to give evidence to the RCMP about yet another Liberal scandal. The scandal is that top execs appointed by Liberals paid $400 million to their own businesses, which is a total of 184 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Why would the Prime Minister go against your government and refuse to provide evidence in yet another Liberal scandal? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition leader just said is completely false. These Conservatives currently are trying to do away with charter-protected rights by using extraordinary powers. They want to take independence away from police in our society. They don't seem to understand what a dangerous precedent they are starting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Paralyzed, unable to work on the problem of doubling housing costs or 2 million people at the food bank because the government is refusing to respect your ruling to turn over evidence in the criminal investigation of the latest Liberal scandal. At issue is that Liberal appointees directed $400 million to companies they own involving 184 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Why is the Prime Minister breaking your ruling to cover up criminal evidence in the latest Liberal scandal?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the Leader of the Opposition is negating to tell the whole truth to Canadians, because what the Conservatives are doing are trying to use the extraordinary powers of this place to circumvent the judicial requirement of police to protect the charter rights of Canadians. Now, I want to believe that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't understand what he's doing, but I'm even more concerned that he does understand, and the charter rights of Canadians are not important to him.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It should be no surprise that Liberals believe that white-collar criminals can hand over $400 million to their own companies, because we see the case of the dirtbag Tibor Organo, who shot a police officer in the stomach yesterday while he was out on bail after having been arrested for 24 offenses he committed while he was out on probation. So let's get this straight. He's out on probation for many crimes. He gets arrested for violating probation, so he gets released on bail and shoots a police officer. When will this government finally accept that their hug-a-thug, catch-and-release system is putting our people at risk?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our hearts go out to the police officer because no police officer should be hurt in the line of duty. But, Mr. Speaker, what is extremely concerning is what the Leader of the Opposition is doing in this House today, where he is trampling the charter rights of Canadians. Whether it is in this House, whether it is outside, Canadians need to be extremely alarmed about the fact that when it comes to their rights, his first instinct is to trample over them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I think you have a charter right to get released after 24 offences while you're already on probation and shoot a police officer in the stomach. I'm more worried about the charter rights of the police officer who's recovering from the gunshot. This is what the police officer said. Almost everyone we arrest is out on bail. No one stays in jail where they belong. The city and the feds just don't care. It just doesn't bother them. It doesn't matter how many die and if a cop gets shot.
That's right.
What's wrong with you people?
I'd like to remind the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, as well as all members of Parliament, that all questions and answers should be directed through the Chair. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, when the men and women in uniform in my city of Toronto or right across the country are harmed in the course of their work, they deserve our absolute respect and solidarity, which we always provide to them. In terms of decisions that are made about bail, these are important considerations. They're considerations where we've made amendments to the bail regime. What happens after amendments are made at the federal parliament is that the ball turns over to the provinces. We need to ask genuine questions about who's making decisions about granting or denying bail. Provincially appointed JPs. About provincial crowns who are making decisions about whether to review bail and what kind of conditions to impose. Those are questions that need to be asked because we need.
The Honourable Member from Brantford Brant, please, will not take the floor until he is recognised. L'Honourable Député de La Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The House's will is clear. Yesterday, the House demanded that the government give a royal recommendation to C-319 to increase old age security by 10% for 65 to 74-year-olds. This is the only permanent solution to put an end to having two classes of seniors. So the Liberals have a choice. Either they respect the will of elected representatives, or they will learn the hard way that voters side with seniors too. Will they give C-319 a royal recommendation, or will they have to update their CVs? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, the member for La Prairie's CV has something rather important. His CV shows that he voted against the new federal Canadian Dental Care Plan. 6,900 people from his riding are signed up for the Canadian Dental Care Plan, Mr. Speaker. The whole Bloc Québécois, every time we put forward measures to help Quebec's seniors, the Bloc Québécois votes against them, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Well, surely the minister knows that in his riding alone, the riding of Gatineau, there are 30,000 seniors aged 65 to 74 who he is depriving of 10% of their OAS. He's the one who's responsible for that. He's the minister for his seniors. He and his buddies created two classes of seniors, and now they're fighting to preserve that injustice against the will of this House. Can he explain to the 30,000 seniors in his riding why, instead of offering them so much as one more penny, he prefers to go to the polls? The Honourable Minister for Seniors and Labour. There are 30,000 seniors in Gatineau. They, like all seniors in Quebec, like all seniors in Canada, still are so happy about the Liberal government's track record when it comes to helping seniors. We've helped some of the most vulnerable seniors in our society, Mr. Speaker. We enhanced the GIS. We immediately, after forming government we worked towards eventually implementing dental care. The Bloc Québécois was against it, but the Liberal Party is there for the 30,000 seniors in Gatineau and seniors everywhere in Canada.
J'aimerais aussi
I would like to remind the member for Rivière-du-Nord, as well as the member for New Westminster Burnaby, to not take the floor when they have not been recognized by the chair.
l'honorable député
The honourable member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis is raging across the country. Under the Liberals, rent doubled. People can't find homes that they can afford. The Conservatives, they would have us believe that they're the solution, when actually they're part of the problem. When he was Minister of Housing, the Conservative leader built 6 apartments, 6 units. Meanwhile, he also let 800,000 homes be sold off to big real estate developers who just want to get rich on the backs of everyone else. The Liberals and the Conservatives created this housing crisis. Why should we trust them to solve it?
l'honorable ministre
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the utmost respect for my colleague, but he was too generous to the Conservative leader's time as housing minister. He didn't build 8 units, he built 6 units during his entire time as housing minister. Yet, the leader of the Conservative Party has no problem telling Quebec's mayors that they're incompetent. And also, he says that in housing co-ops, people live Soviet style. He says it's Soviet style to have social housing.
from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Continue to violate the human rights of persons with disabilities. Even while they're getting sued by their own accessibility commissioner, this government continues to propose an inadequate and inaccessible Canada Disability Benefit. This is cruel and callous. This government has received over 10,000 pieces of input through consultation, and the Cabinet needs to act on it. Will the Liberals finally listen to the disability community, increase the benefit, unlock it from behind the inaccessible disability tax credit, and get it out to people now?
The Honourable Minister for Disability
Mr.
Inclusion.
Speaker, our government has done more than any other government when it comes to supporting and building a more accessible Canada. Once again, our government is stepping up, delivering a new historic support in the Canada Disability Benefit, which is going to help over 600,000 Canadians with disabilities. While the NDP and the Conservatives are focused on their own political ambitions, Mr. Speaker, we're focused on delivering for some of the most vulnerable in our communities. And Mr. Speaker, we're on track to deliver this benefit next July. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the bad news keeps rolling in from credible financial experts. This week's Economist, quote, were Canada's 10 provinces and 3 territories an American state, they would have gone from being slightly richer than Montana, America's 9th poorest state, to being a bit worse off than Alabama, the 4th poorest. Alabama. To fix a problem, one has to admit that it exists. Will the government admit that under its policies, Canada is now poorer than Alabama, America's 4th poorest state?
The Honourable Minister for Digital Services.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are very particular about what statistics they choose to share. If they want to share, compare Canada to the U.S.
The Honourable Minister from Digital Services can start again from the top.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are very careful about the statistics they choose to share. If they want to compare us to the United States, we might start with health care or dental care or farmer care or child care. But if they want to focus on the economy, they might focus on the fact that we have a lower deficit, that we have lower debt servicing costs, that we pay a lower interest rates than America does, that we have higher forecast economic growth. The unfortunate thing is because of the dangerous promises of the Leader of the Opposition, they don't want Canadians to hear about that, which is why they're promising to cancel the CBC.
The Honourable Member from Wellington. The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, this data, these statistics aren't coming from Conservatives. They're coming from credible financial experts at the Financial Times of London and The Economist, two organizations for which the finance minister once worked, and surely the government isn't suggesting these organizations are biased. Again, to fix a problem, one has to admit that it exists. Will the government admit that under its spending, its budgets, its plans, Canada is now poorer than Alabama, America's fourth poorest state?
The Honourable Minister for Digital Services.
Of course not, Mr. Speaker. What the member opposite is saying is ridiculous. The truth is that the Leader of the Opposition offers Canadians no viable solutions. On housing, they want to add 5%.
Sit down, the Speaker's going to talk.
The Honourable Minister for Digital Services from the top, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. They don't want to hear this information. I mean, the truth is the Leader of the Opposition offers no solutions for Canadians. On housing, he wants to add 5% tax on apartment construction. On affordability, doesn't support dental care, doesn't support pharmacare, doesn't support childcare. He doesn't support the tax cuts that we gave for the middle class, doesn't support the tax cuts we gave for small business, and worst of all, is he doesn't want anybody to hear about this, which is why he wants to cancel the CBC and take that away from Canadians as well.
The Honourable Member from Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, the Financial Times wrote 1 year ago, if current trends continue, Canadian living standards would continue to decline. It's been a year and it's gotten worse. This week, The Economist said that Canada is now poorer than Alabama. Will any minister over there admit that Canadian living standards are in decline?
The Honourable... The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is now the second member to admire Alabama and say that Alabama is doing better than Canada. I think Canada's the greatest nation on earth. Exactly. And I think that I'm really proud of this country and what we're doing. I'm proud of our healthcare system, Mr. Speaker. And when you take a look at the Conservatives are filibustering in committee right now a study of privatizing healthcare, no wonder they have an admiration of the American model, because they want to clear-cut our healthcare system. They won't. You talk about not acknowledging a problem. They have no solutions for the gaps that we have in care. We do. We're delivering. We're going to keep doing it.
The Honourable Member from Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, that minister wants Canadians to believe that they've never had it so good, but here's what Canadians are actually experiencing. The worst housing inflation, the worst mortgage debt, the worst consumer debt in the G7. Income per person today is lower than it was 10 years ago, and now the OECD says Canada real GDP growth will be last among its member nations until 2060. So will they finally admit that under their leadership, Canadian living standards are declining?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, nobody is denying that in every corner of the globe that there are challenges and that you can cherry pick statistics here or there. But the question is, what do you do as a country to meet the challenging moments you're in? The Conservatives' answer is to provide a slogan and no plan. I just invite people to pull back the curtain like the Wizard of Oz and just see what's back there. Not a thing. Not a single thing. In difference and in contrast, we have a plan. Since last I spoke in this House, we've gained 50,000 people in dental care. That's 800,000 people getting care on something they won't even admit exists. This is about doing hard work and doing the right thing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, when this government was elected in 9 years, they were elected with false promises, and now Canada is totally broken. This government has spent recklessly and has posted deficits every single year. So what's the result of that? The debt has doubled over 9 years. Also, this Prime Minister has increased Canada's debt more than all other Prime Ministers combined. The OECD projects that Canada's economic growth will be the worst of all OECD member countries over the next 30 years. Can they do the only honourable thing left for them to do, which would be to call an election? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One thing has increased over the past few years. That is this government's investment in affordable housing. Before the member was elected, her party's leader, who used to be housing minister, created a grand total of 6 affordable housing units. Meanwhile, in his riding, we have now built 305 affordable units, and even more will be built through a historic agreement we signed with the province of Quebec. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Échemins, Lévis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here are the facts. Canada is behind our neighbour and trade partner, the United States, when it comes to economic growth and productivity. Is it normal that the economy of Texas is stronger than that of all Canadian provinces put together, and they have 10 million fewer people in that state? This government and its budget policy has tanked Quebec's economy and Canada's economy. Conservatives want change. Canadians want control over their lives. Conservatives want to do that for them. The only thing to do is call an election. Will you call an election? As I have already mentioned, all questions should be addressed to the chair. I'm sure that the honourable member didn't have that question just for me. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague and all Quebecers that the last time the Conservatives formed government, the Harper government did not balance the books in Canada. They ran a deficit. They cut services for They, in fact, cut taxes for the wealthy and cut services for everyone else. We all remember the Harper government cuts to science. They also cut the census. We all remember that they thought we didn't need data on the Canadian population. Conservatives, when I think of Conservatives, I think of only one thing, Mr. Speaker: austerity. The Honourable Member for Shefford. The House has spoken. Yesterday, the House demanded a 10% increase in old age security for 65 to 74-year-olds. The House demanded that the government give a royal recommendation to C-319. This bill is the only way to provide lasting income protection for all seniors. It is also the only lasting way to put an end to age-based discrimination against seniors. Will the government finally listen to the will of the House, listen to the will of seniors, and give C-319 its royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, in the Canton de l'Est, Eastern Townships, one of the most beautiful ridings in Quebec and in Canada, we're proud that in the riding of Shefford alone, 13,000 people, 13,300 people have signed up for the federal Canadian Dental Care Plan. They're very happy to be part of the plan, to benefit from it. My colleague, the member, she voted against it. Why? The Honourable Member for Shefford. The Minister for Seniors has spent the week lecturing others. But he's in no position to do so. He's depriving almost 30,000 people in his own riding of a 10% increase in their old age security. He's the Minister for Seniors. He's the one leading the Liberal battle against the House's desire to support 65 to 74-year-olds. He's even prepared to risk an election to avoid having to increase pensions. Can he look the 30,000 seniors in his riding in the eye and explain to them why, in his opinion, they don't deserve a single cent more? The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Labour. Mr. Speaker, there are not 30,000 people between 65 and 74 years of age in Gatineau but we'll leave that for another time. The seniors who do live in Gatineau are very happy, in fact. They're happy that we supported them during the pandemic. They are happy that we supported the most vulnerable seniors in Gatineau. Moreover, the Liberal government was there for seniors. We gave them the supports that they needed. We will continue to do so. The Bloc Québécois, though, will continue to vote against it. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Well, that's Quebec Liberals 101 for you. They are passionate about helping seniors in their speeches that they give in Ottawa, but in reality, they let seniors down right in their own backyards. The Minister for Seniors, the member for Gatineau, is depriving almost 30,000 seniors of a 10% increase in their old age security. The Quebec lieutenant, whose riding is in Quebec City, is letting down almost 15,000 people. The Prime Minister, whose riding is in Montreal, is depriving nearly 10,000 seniors of income. Honestly, with MPs like them, wouldn't it be better for us all to go to the polls? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, we can all remember that during the COVID-19 pandemic, when it came time to be present in this House to support Canadians, be it enhancing the GST rebate, be it enhancing supports for seniors, enhancing healthcare spending. We invested in many ways to support seniors. I think we will all remember who was here supporting Quebec's seniors. It was the Liberal Party of Canada and its Quebec MPs, not the Bloc Québécois, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
After 9 years of NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, time's up, and corruption is way up. Here's what we know so far. The Liberals stacked the SDTC board with their close friends. That board makes decisions as to which companies get grants worth millions in tax dollars. The Auditor General uncovered a massive scandal. These Liberal insiders funneled almost $400 million to their own companies. They got rich, taxpayers got the bill. Now the government's refusing to hand over the documents to the RCMP for a potential criminal investigation. So what have they got to hide?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, again, the House Leader for the Conservatives is completely false in what he is stating in this place. What is true is that the Conservatives have put forward a motion that would blur the lines between the independence of the legislative and judicial branches of government. It is both the RCMP and the Auditor General who have raised their extreme concern with what the Conservatives have put forward. Every Canadian should be concerned about the fact that the first instinct of Conservatives is to suspend the charter rights of Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
The Charter is there to protect the people from the government, not to protect the government from accountability by the people. While millions of Canadians are suffering from higher taxes, higher prices, and doubled housing costs, all caused by this government, the Speaker has ordered that the House of Commons can deal with no other business until this corruption motion is dealt with, and they still won't hand over the documents, preferring that Parliament grind to a halt. While millions of Canadians are lining up for food banks, Liberal insiders are lining their own pockets. So when will the government hand over the documents, and when will the government get Canadians their tax dollars back?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I think my honourable colleague's erratic and unhinged behaviour is because he knows that he is being completely false in what he is putting forward to this place. Mr. Speaker, what the Conservatives are putting forward is to trample the charter rights of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Both the RCMP and the Auditor General have raised their extreme discomfort, and every single Canadian should be extremely alarmed by the behaviour of the Conservative members of Parliament who would put their own political interests ahead of the rights of Canadians.
I just want to remind all members to use language make sure that it doesn't skate too close to the line. I made this point yesterday during question period as well when a question was asked from the other side. The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up, and conflict of interest is up at the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Auditor General found that 82% of the transactions approved by Liberal insiders went to their own companies, totaling almost $400 million. This House demanded that the government turn over those documents to the RCMP, and this Prime Minister is refusing. Shame. How many more millions of misappropriated tax dollars is the Prime Minister hiding by refusing to turn over the documents?
Yes. The Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives don't want to share the uncomfortable truth that they are trying to use the extraordinary powers of this place to circumvent the judicial oversight that is required by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect Canadians. The only thing they are interested in doing is pursuing their naked pursuit for partisan gain while they trample the charter rights of Canadians. Every Canadian citizen and resident should be extremely alarmed that instead of protecting their rights, they are looking for their own political gain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, since Orange Shirt Day, we've seen countless examples of residential school denialism, including from Conservative candidates in both New Brunswick and BC. And, Mr. Speaker, we know the leader of the Conservative Party supports this kind of rhetoric, having fundraised with residential school denying think tanks. Survivors have a right to be protected from hate speech. Will the government support my bill and protect survivors from residential school denialism once and for all?
The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Winnipeg Centre for her work in bringing forward the bill that will recognize residential school denialism as a hate crime. I look forward to working with her, and we know that as we mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, this was a painful reminder that we need to do better to educate Canadians on the impacts of residential schools, as well as the hurtful acts of denialism that take place in many parts of the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 3 years since the tugboat in Janika sank, killing Troy Pearson and Charlie Craig. And it's been 2 years and 3 transport ministers since this government promised strengthened marine personnel regulations to protect workers like Troy and Charlie. And every single day, workers are going to sea without the protections that this government promised. So to the minister, how can she justify continued delays when workers' lives are on the line?
You're here. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. Safety is always our top priority. When the Transportation Safety Board issues a report, we always carefully consider its recommendations, and this, in fact, was also the case with the MV in Janika. We're working now to implement recommendations and strengthen safety measures, and we're working every step of the way with industry, with unions, and with experts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was International Wrongful Conviction Day. In grade 7, I wrote a paper on David Milgaard, a prairie kid who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The injustice of his case was appalling. Immortalized through the tragically hip song Wheat Kings, it captured the attention of the nation. Too many innocent people have suffered over the years. In fact, just today, again in my hometown of Winnipeg, a wrongfully convicted man was exonerated. As Gord Downey reminded us, we can't be fond of living in the past. Can the Minister of Justice explain how Bill C-40 will help strengthen our legal system to protect against wrongful convictions in the future? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I thank the member for his question, and I want to start with Clarence Woodhouse. My thoughts are with Clarence Woodhouse and the suffering he has endured unjustly for decades, as long as recognizing the suffering of all of those who have endured an injustice. The bill that he's referencing, David and Joyce Milgaard's law, will create real change. It will create an independent commission to review potential miscarriages of justice. It will revolutionize access to justice in Canada. To all innocent people who have been wrongfully convicted and whom are still awaiting justice, help is on the way. And to Clarence, I'm sorry for all of your suffering. Your story proves why we need to work harder for a better, fairer, and more equitable justice system for all.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Carbon Tax Carney took on a role as the de facto finance minister for the NDP Liberals, and almost immediately he got $2 million for his buddy who owns Telesat, and then he landed discussions for his trillion-dollar company, Brookfield, to get their hands on 10 billion Canadian pension dollars. And then he starts sending fundraising letters for these Liberals. After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time's up for their corruption. Will they simply cooperate with an investigation from the lobbying commissioner?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, they continue to try to smear a Canadian who is recognized around the world for his work. I want to go back to their weird admiration of Alabama. Did you know that Alabama has the third lowest life expectancy in the United States? Did you know that the life expectancy in Alabama is a full decade lower than in Canada? Did you know that in Alabama they have some of the most restrictive rules around a woman getting access to an abortion or contraceptives? Is that what they admire about Alabama? Is that why they're talking about upping Alabama's and saying that Alabama is better than Canada? I wonder why they're so interested in Alabama, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, I know we've been hearing about unhinged responses today, and there's one. You can check the answer. There was nothing about Alabama in here, but you could see that from noted Liberal strategist and commentator Trevor Tombe, who did make that comparison. But when we are making comparisons, you can make many to banana republics and the corruption under this NDP Liberal government, with the Prime Minister twice found guilty himself of breaking ethics laws. This government is absolutely out of touch after 9 years. And now they've put in Mark Conflict of Interest Carney in charge of their economic policy. Why can't we just have a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand why the member opposite's getting a little riled up, because there's some uncomfortable truths that are being put forward here. And while they continue to talk down Canadians and talk down our country, the bigger concern is what they're trying to do in this place, where they are overriding the charter rights of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to privacy rights, and indeed when it comes to a woman's right to choose, what we know the first inclination of Conservative Member of Parliament is to do is to take them away. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary, Nose Hill.
A trillion-dollar everything corporation that's currently asking for billions of tax dollars recently faced shareholder calls for transparency after a scathing report raised questions about whether Brookfield engages in tax avoidance strategies when it comes to paying Canadian tax. The Liberals just appointed Brookfield's board chair, carbon tax promoting Mr. Carney, to craft Canada's economic policy. The Liberals won't say if they cleared this with the lobbying commissioner. Are the concerns Brookfield shareholders had about tax transparency the reason why?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, this is another typical attack from the Conservatives against Canadians who do not support their vision for Canada. We have seen this over the last 9 years, that when Canadians, and it's, I guess, hurtful for them when it's people they appointed to important positions that come forward and don't actually agree with their vision of Canada, what do? They attack them. They bring them down. They are not open to debate or to criticism, and their only inclination is to attack fellow Canadians.
The honourable member from Calgary, Nose Hill.
This is, Mr. Speaker, as another typical Liberal scandal. The Conflict of Interest Act prohibits ministers from furthering interests of their friends, which is why the Act requires ministers to declare close friendships with people who lobby. The Finance Minister has frequently mentioned her close personal friendship with the Chair of Brookfield, and who now holds a senior Liberal economic advisory position. In describing her relationship with the carbon tax promoting Mr. Carney, the Minister said things like, "Truly, Mark is a personal friend of mine, very long-standing. I speak with Mark often, and he's the godfather of my son." Has the Minister declared her friendship with the world's...
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, again, this is just a simple personal attack because the Conservatives are sad or disappointed that there are eminent Canadians that don't support their dangerous vision of Canada, to be honest. There's a reason why Canadians who have global recognition are working to support a progressive vision of this country. But what we see from the Conservatives is that when Canadians or organizations don't support them, all they do is attack.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. If the Liberals want to stay in power past October 29th, they need to get moving for our farmers. Bill C-282, one simple clause to protect supply management, has been stuck in the Senate for over a year. Why? Well, because Peter Beam and Peter Harder, two unelected mini-monarchs appointed to the Senate by the Liberals, are actively blocking a bill that was supported by the majority of members of this House. Will the Liberals make sure that their senators respect democracy and adopt Bill C-282? The Honourable Minister of Public Works and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal Party has always supported supply management in Canada, and it's a Liberal government that put in place supply management many years ago. We have always been there to support farmers. We have also voted in favor of this supply management bill. The senators know that they are independent, but the senators know they need to get their work done and listen to the House and the will of the House. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. All parties should be furious to see senators blocking the will of the House. We can't let two unelected senators, and remember, they're unelected, decide between two naps to threaten Quebec's farmers. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about farmers. They don't care about 6,000 businesses in Quebec. They don't care about 100,000 jobs in Quebec. They don't care about Quebecers. That's enough. So I call on all parties in this House, and farmers are listening. Will they pick up the phone and tell their senators to respect democracy and pass Bill C-282? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I already said a couple of moments ago that the Liberal government has always stood behind supply management to protect farmers in Quebec and farmers across Canada. We've shown that many times, including during difficult trade negotiations with President Trump. We held the line. We insisted. We won against President Trump to protect the interests of farmers in Quebec and across Canada. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, supported by the Bloc, Liberal corruption has taken over the House of Commons. Once again, the Prime Minister is ready to do anything to protect his little buddies who follow his example and make a mockery of ethics and conflict of interest rules. 186 conflicts of interest in the Liberal Green Fund involving $330 million of public money. $330 million, Mr. Speaker, that's 7 times more money than the sponsorship scandal. Why is the Prime Minister refusing to hand over all the documents requested by the House to the RCMP? What's so corrupt in there that they're once again ignoring an order of this House? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, once again, Conservative members are not presenting accurate information to Canadians because it's Conservative members who are destroying rights protected by the Charter, Canadians' rights. Canadians should be incredibly concerned by what the Conservative members are doing. They are blurring the line between the House of Commons and the legal process. That's very, very concerning, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Canadians' rights are more important right than this government to hide things from Canadians. The Liberals are trying to end the privilege debate, and they could do it by being honest and transparent by giving the documents to the House right away. Conservatives have proved that parliamentary privilege has been violated. The Auditor General of Canada showed that the Prime Minister created a slush fund for Liberal insiders. His ministers were aware, and they allowed STDC to participate in corruption. The House is overflowing with Liberal corruption. When will Canadians see their money again? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, what my honourable colleague is saying is completely false. The Auditor General and the RCMP, what they've actually said is that they are extremely concerned by the Conservative motion because it is going to destroy Canadians' rights, and the House has the privilege to do that. Sorry?
Not sure what you
I apologize. Unfortunately, I only looked at the clock, and the clock is incorrect. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister to start her question from the top. This one is on me, dear colleagues, and I apologize, but we'll make sure that the clock starts at the right time. The Honourable, then I have
the Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What my honourable colleague is saying is completely false. What the Auditor General and the RCMP have said is that they are extremely concerned by what the Conservatives' motion represents in this House, because it limits Canadians' rights that are protected by the Charter. I know that Canadians' rights and the rights of Quebecers are very important, and it's the Conservatives who want to take away those rights for their own political gain. It's really concerning.
Then I have
the Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable had 2 opportunities to ask questions. I'm sure he could take another if his colleague will let him have that time. So otherwise, please don't speak unless being recognized. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has showed us that the Prime Minister broke the Conflict of Interest law by using a green fund managed by Sustainable Development Technology Canada to give gifts to his buddies. The Liberals have refused the legitimate demand of the Conservative Party to hand over documents from this slush fund to the RCMP for investigation. Mr. Speaker, these Liberal secrets represent 180 cases of conflict of interest for almost $400 million of taxpayer money. When are we going to see Canadians' money again? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague has already answered several times. He's talking about secrets. And listen, there's something that I don't want to hide from you is in his riding, there are 11,900 seniors who got their card to become members of the new Canadian Dental Care Plan, and yet his leader has said, no, I can't tell you why I'm against the Canada Dental Care Plan, because it doesn't exist. I can't tell you why I'm against it, because it doesn't exist. How does he explain to seniors in his riding, the 11,900 in his riding, that the card they received doesn't exist? The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Louis. In 2021, we committed to strengthening and modernizing the Canadian Environmental Protection Act to better protect the environment and Canadians' health. With the passage of Bill S5, the Strengthening Environmental Protection for a Healthy Canada Act, we have kept that promise. Can the Minister for Environment and Climate Change please give us an update on the implementation of this new law?
Then I have the Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question and for all his work on the environment. Yesterday, our government announced additional measures to protect Canadians against pollution, including we know that the Conservatives' priority when it comes to the environment is to give polluters a free pass. They want to give the oil and gas sector the right to pollute for free as much as they want. However, instead of listening to experts, they've listened to conspiracy theories like the Premier of Alberta, and they continue to spread misinformation.
Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the shady business partner of the Minister of Employment testified that the Randian text messages implicated in a $500,000 shakedown is someone other than the minister. But, surprise, surprise, when he was ordered by the Ethics Committee to identify this so-called other Randy, he refused to do so. Everyone knows why. Will the minister just stand in his place and admit it's him?
Colleagues, for the second time, and I hope the last time, I'm going to ask the honourable member from Brantford Brant please not to take the floor unless he is recognised by the chair. The honourable leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, when witnesses testify before committees, they are obliged to provide the information that is asked of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, where's Randy? And speaking of not being forthcoming at committee, the minister testified that he had absolutely no communications with his shady business partner at or around the time of the $500,000 shakedown. But now that phone records have proven otherwise, the minister has been forced to admit that he phoned and texted his shady business partner at the very same time. If the minister isn't Randy in the text messages, then why did he hide this material fact from committee?
The honourable leader of the government in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I stated earlier, if a witness is asked to provide information to a committee, we expect they provide it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary, Midnapore.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Now, this government is no stranger to the bait and switch. It was the Prime Minister himself who said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Yet all Canadians have received is fraud and corruption. So I was happy to see that the Procurement Ombudsman is going to undertake a study of the bait and switch practices of this government. But why does it always take another hand to force this government to do the right thing?
The honourable leader of the government in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd actually turn that question around on my honourable colleagues in front who have decided to abuse the power of this place, to use their powers to upend and override the charter rights of Canadians. So, Mr. Speaker, if the Conservative Party members want to ask themselves how they can do the right things, it's to make sure they don't abuse the powers of this place and they protect the charter rights of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, this fall, thousands of young Canadians are starting their post-secondary journey, including at UBC in my riding of Vancouver Quadra. These students are our future, and our government recognizes we have a role to play in helping them with the cost of living. They shouldn't be stressed out about paying tuition and rent, but rather they should be able to focus on their classes. Agreed. Will the Minister of Employment and Workforce Development please tell this House just what our government is doing to support students right across the country? Excellent question.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
And the Conservative members in this House for congratulating us for all the work we're doing to make life easier for students. Whether it's taking off federal interest on student loans, whether it's making those student loans even doubling them, Mr. Speaker, you know what we're doing? We're making sure that apprentices are trained from coast to coast to coast. We've increased student loans. We've taken off the federal student debt. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because we're there to support students every step of the way. They're heckling us every step of the way. We're supporting students to build Canada and make sure we have an economy that is fair for every generation.
Colleagues, the honourable member from Elmwood, Transcona.
Mr.
Speaker, for years, working families in my home province of Manitoba suffered from conservative cuts to our healthcare system and social programs. Under this government, the cost of rent and food has shot up. That is why the NDP has fought to deliver dental care and pharmacare and help lower costs for Canadians. Anti-scab legislation to empower workers for better wages. While the NDP fight for measures to help people, I ask why the government refuses to crack down on corporate greed and ripping off the hard-working members of Elmwood Transcona.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my honourable colleague to this House. I look forward to their contribution. And, you know, we may disagree on how we get to solutions, but it's really wonderful to work with parties that are focused on solutions. We have parties that are really interested in finding common ground and doing things like dental care, which has seen 800,000 people get care, finding solutions like affordable medicine. And then we have a party obsessed with slogans with nothing behind them, who won't even admit they have no plan whatsoever for a senior who needs dental care or a person who needs essential medicine. Really, their message is, you're on your own, but we got a fun slogan.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this year in my community, we've already lost 64 people to poison drugs. The federal government has a $359 million program to support prevention, harm reduction, and treatment initiatives called SUAP. This government has previously funded programs in Waterloo Region, but this year, while multiple organizations submitted applications, 0 SUAP dollars have been committed to any programming in my community to date. Will the minister commit to reviewing SUAP funding decisions to ensure hotspots like Waterloo Region are not left unfunded?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Addictions and Mental Health.
Mr. Speaker, and I know that the member is a strong advocate for his community. I know also that he has recently exchanged with our department and that another meeting has been scheduled to discuss this further. We know that all communities, communities across Canada are impacted by substance use, including in the Kitchener-Waterloo region, and that's why we have invested in 400 projects, more than 400 projects through the SUAP program, making a real difference in the Canadians' life.
Great job. Bravo. Bravo. And so brings to an end of question period. I